Trump is bad is not an effective message.
I guess this is as effective as any other kind of bullshit.
Welcome to Political Experts React, where we break down political ads and media, explain what the people behind them were trying to accomplish, and decide whether or not they did a good job. I'm Dan Pfeiffer, former communications director for Barack Obama. And joining me today is Jason Kander, former Missouri Secretary of State, a veteran, also ran one of the most famous political ads of the last decade.
I approve this message because I'd like to see Senator Blunt do this.
Jason Kander, welcome to Political Experts React. How you doing, man?
I am doing fantastic. I'm not sure anybody's ever called me a political expert, so this is a big day for me, so thank you.
Yes, the only qualification for being a political expert is having access to twitter.com, so we are good to go.
Oh, then I've been one for some time.
The topic of this episode of Political Experts React is how politicians are using the Russian invasion of Ukraine to sort of frame issues heading into the 2022 midterms. The first ad we're going to watch is from Advancing American Freedom, a Republican super PAC run by Mike Pence.
Before Russian bombs began to rain on Ukraine, before hundreds of innocent Ukrainians lost their lives, a horrific decision had already been made. Joe Biden caved to the radical environmentalist and stopped America's Keystone Pipeline and dramatically increased Americans' dependence on Russian oil, endangering America's security and helping Russia fund their invasion. Call Congresswoman Axme and tell her to support America's security instead of Russia's terror.
What did you think of this ad? Is the message something that gives you pause as a Democrat?
I'm not going to argue like this is a super effective message for them, but I do think it's like what they have. They know that they have to try and make Biden own gas prices because it's kind of the only arrow in their quiver right now. Choosing like the Keystone Pipeline, I guess they're counting on us to not be able to effectively make the, to me, rather obvious argument for those who are informed that the two have nothing to do with each other, given the facts as they have them, which is they have to try and take advantage of gas prices being what they are politically. I guess this is as effective as any other kind of bullshit.
Yeah, that's sort of my take, which is, I mean, it's just notable. This is Mike Pence, a man who stood with Donald Trump as Donald Trump took Putin's assessment of what happened in Russia over his own intelligence agencies. A lot of Republicans view that relationship as some level of political weakness, which we'll get to later in this episode. I would say, like Mike Pence, this ad will win no awards for creativity, ingenuity, originality. But unlike Mike Pence, it might be effective in the sense that, as you point out, we know two things about gas prices. One, voters get very mad about gas prices very quickly because it's the one part of your budget you can't really fix. You have to drive to work. You have to pick your kids up from school. You have to go to the store. And then the other thing we know is when gas prices go up, the public takes it out on the party in power and Democrats on the party in power. So they're pushing on an open door here. Like it's a fine execution of a sort of a well-worn strategy. The question is, can Democrats push back?
The other thing, sort of a bank shot that it's doing, is what they've had to do from the beginning of the Biden administration, which is try and underline any sort of chaos. A bunch of gruesome images of war, never mind the fact that I don't think voters expect President Biden to have stopped a war in Eastern Europe. It contributes to the narrative of it's still chaos.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And I think that is probably Biden's greatest political challenge to date is, even though Trump is gone, for a whole host of reasons completely outside of Joe Biden's control, the pandemic, things abroad, things still feel chaotic. The next ad we're going to watch is from Pat McCrory, a Republican running for Senate in North Carolina.
While Ukrainians bled and died,
he's a very intelligent actor.
Congressman Budd excused their killer.
There are strategic reasons why he would want to protect his southern and western flank. We understand that.
Budd's votes have been friendly toward Russia. He voted against sanctions on Russia. These are serious times and we need serious senators. I'm Pat McCrory. I don't compliment our enemies. I stand for truth and freedom. I approve this message. Make your stand with me.
Context for the viewers. McCrory is a far-right Republican running against a Republican endorsed by Trump in the Republican primary. McCrory is not a never-Trumper. He is not Friends of the Lincoln Project. He is a Republican trying to run against another Republican for being too close to Putin.
That makes a lot of sense because he never assigns motive. And I think that that's something that's always missing from these ads. Like when you have an attack ad where you just say a bunch of bad things and particularly list bad votes by your opponent, when you don't assign motive, motive, the viewer is just left very skeptical, right? Because they're like, yeah, I guess that'd be bad, but why would he do that? Now, you can't assign motive if you're trying very hard not to put yourself on the opposite side of Trump in the primary, because the most obvious motive is because he's a Trump guy and he's doing what Trump does.
I think this is fascinating. You're exactly right about motive. I mean, this is, I call it the Moscow Mitch fallacy, which is, how everyone from like 2017 to 2020 said, we're going to call Mitch McConnell Moscow Mitch. And that definitely angered Mitch McConnell, which is in and of itself a good reason to do almost anything. But like, what does it mean? This suffers from that as like, yeah, he's pro-Putin, but why? There's some reporting that Trump has some second thoughts about his endorsement of Ted Budd, which I'm sure he gave a lot of thought to originally after a very serious vetting process and analysis of what could possibly be. So I'm very fascinated to see how this plays out. My producers, who would definitely never lie to me in order to meet their quarterly engagement goals, tell me that more than 40% of the people who watch Political Experts React videos are not subscribed to the Crooked Media YouTube channel. That means that every week I get up here, I embarrass myself as I beg you for these stupid subscription smashes, and you don't do it. But you just laugh at me and watch the end of the video? That's pretty sad. On a more serious note, and I know that serious runs counter to the typical tone of the Political Experts React subscribe pitches, but when Ben Shapiro or Prager University or any of these other conservative YouTube channels that are spreading dangerous disinformation go out, all of the viewers hit subscribe. The more people who subscribe, the more often the YouTube algorithm recommends the video. So if we want to be able to fight back against Republican disinformation, one way to do that is to subscribe to progressive YouTube channels like Crooked Media. So please smash that subscribe button, this time in seriousness. Okay, next ad we're gonna watch is from the Republican Accountability Project, a overly obvious described super PAC.
I knew Putin very well. Got a lot of great charm and a lot of pride. Putin declares a big portion of the Ukraine as independent. And I said, this is genius. And he's going to go in and be a peacekeeper. There were more army tanks than I've ever seen. They're going to keep peace all right. You got to say that's pretty savvy. I knew that he always wanted Ukraine. I used to talk to him about it.
I mean, what he's done for Russia is really amazing, and he's done it by outsmarting our country at every single step.
The day after the Olympics, he starts with Ukraine. The day after. How smart? How smart? How smart?
What do you think about this one?
I like this one. It's not an ad where it's like, well, this is going to win people over automatically. But I think what it's doing is really important. We know the BS revisionist history about Trump's relationship with Putin is coming and really has already started. So I think that this has to be a consistent message of, no, remember, no matter what he says now, like, this is his position on it. Like, we have to keep hammering this home or people will just forget because they'll say the opposite.
I have mixed feelings on this ad. Trump's voice with very compelling images. I think that is very good. But there is no payoff here. Trump is bad is not an effective message. Why is Trump bad? Why is Trump loving Putin bad for you? How does that affect your life? But there needs to be like a why.
I think that what we need to do is we need to start educating people about the fact that this Trumpism is not an American phenomenon, that there's a right-wing, autocratic, authoritarian thing sweeping across the world, and that America has to decide which side of it it's on.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. If there is ever a way in which Ukraine and Russia's invasion and Russia and Putin and everything is going to play out in the 2022 elections, it is if Democrats can stitch together a narrative that explains that ultimately what is happening in Ukraine and Russia and what is happening in this country is a battle between progressive, forward-looking democracy and retrograde conservative autocracy trying to stop change.
Each of the ads we've looked at here, what they've all done is they've all fallen into the old way of thinking, which is, let's take this foreign policy issue and let's talk about it as, well, where does this candidate come down on Ukraine? Where do they come down on Russia? And what you and I are saying is, no, there's a larger conversation. Where does this candidate come down on authoritarian or democratic? Because that's what the entire world is talking about.
That is a perfect place to end. Jason Kander, thank you so much for joining us on Political Experts React.
Thank you very much. Always good to see you, man.
Thanks for watching these ads and videos with us. If you have anything you'd like us to break down, let us know in the comments.